And welcome to Advantage Radio Ministries, and welcome to Second Chances here at Lift FM. My name is Greg Hennis, and once again this week we have a wonderful guest with us, as all of our guests do. We often mention this, that they all have that common thread, no matter what they do, where they're from. They all have that common thread of Jesus is the Lord of their life. And our guest today is Dr. Stuart Eldridge. He is a board-certified pediatrician with more than 20 years in primary care. He's focused much of his career in helping parents hone their parenting skills, taught parenting classes, and helped train healthcare professionals. Him and his wife, Janet, have been married for 27 years and have 2 children. And Dr. Stuart Eldridge, it is a pleasure to have you on as we discuss the book today, Passionate Parenting. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. I'm glad to be joining you. Looking forward to that time.
Well, thank you. Get us started, Dr. Stewart. Give us a little bit of background on where you're from and how you grew to know the Lord as your Savior.
Well, we live here in Floyd and Knobs, Indiana, which most people do not know where that is, but it's just really close to Louisville, Kentucky, where Churchill Downs is located, which most people have a better reference to. I grew up in the church. My parents were a strong Christian couple, and so I grew up in the church, and my wife and I met, and we've been attending Northside Christian Church here in New Albany, Indiana, since we got, just after we got married, so close to 22, 23 years. And I've sort of walked with the Lord all my life, but as everybody can be, you can always be working more towards your walk and strengthening it and building on it. So that's my time as far as my walk with the Lord, and then I've been doing this pediatric work, and we have a Christian-based practice here. It's multi-specialty. We see all ages, and I started that 22 years ago.
Wow.
With my partner.
The book that we're going to be talking about, Passionate Parenting, is this the first time you've actually had a book published?
Yes, it is. It's the first book I've written. I've thought about it for a while, felt called to write this after my wife and I have been teaching parenting in our church and at our home for about 20 years. We've done the Growing Families International curriculum at church, which is through Gary and Emery Ezzo. And I've been teaching and training and helping parents throughout those 20 years, but it just, despite that, I felt like we weren't reaching enough parents fast enough through a lot of the Christian avenues. I mean, Growing Families International is doing a great job, focus on the family. There's many others, but the healthcare profession, I believe, needed to get on board. The reason I felt that is that, parenting training was always done in the family for many years, but unfortunately the families are so fractured and dysfunctioned, and they're also suffering from distance and drugs and alcohol. There's so many different things that are tearing the families apart that I don't think the parenting training is happening within the families, and I've just believed over a number of years that we needed this, the healthcare profession needed to get on board and having training skills to be able to help parents. The problem is we don't get training in our profession. It's not part of our training because it didn't have to be for many years, but it needs to be now is what I believe, and that's why what was the motivation, the impetus behind the book.
How difficult of a process was to take the work that you put together and get it published?
Well, it was a challenge, and it took about a year to write the book. It took about 8 months to get it published. I did it through Tate Publishing. They're what's called a self-publishing company. In other words, you pay them and then they help you get it published, but you still retain all the rights to the book, which I really wanted to do. And they're a strong Christian publishing company out of Oklahoma. And it was a challenge. It was tough getting it written. I've had a lot of people look at the book and wish I had written it also for parents, which it actually can be used by both. And I've actually sold as many to parents as healthcare professionals to this point because it's fairly new in the process of getting out there. I'm still getting the word out, and a lot of parents have benefited from the book. And so it's an easy book to read. It's not very long. It's 150 pages. It's got summaries at the end of each chapter, and I did that mostly to help the healthcare professionals who are very busy to be able to look at something quickly after they've read the chapter. They can have a quick reference. But the parents have really benefited from it as well. They just have to ignore the part that says, as a healthcare professional, talk about this, and it's this that they can learn from. So it's been beneficial to both parents and to healthcare professionals so far.
As a pediatrician, what are some of the issues or challenges, Dr. Stewart, that you see with parenting that concerns you the most?
Well, the biggest concern I have is, truly is a decline in the parenting skills of our young parents and couples. And it's not that they love their children any less at all. It's just they don't get the training they need, and society's telling them, all these things to do, which most of them is not taking them in the right direction. And so, of course, the marriage is not being emphasized as the foundation of the family, and that is the foundation of the family. And when that falls apart, so does the family. And so the children are in multiple different homes, and that's very difficult and very hard on the children to adapt to that. They get a lot of different training from their different parents, mostly because the parents are really sometimes angry with each other. So there's a lot of parenting problems. We also trained our parents years ago, like back in the 70s, we started doing what's called permissive parenting, where they want to allow their children to make all the decisions and all the choices. They want to try to be their friend instead of an authority, and that's, I think, just really hurt the family, because I really believe children need boundaries and rules, and they need to have their parent be the authority figure, and then gradually over time allow them, more opportunities to make decisions and choices. But we're giving choices to children at way too young of an age, and it's really a problem for the behavior problems that we've seen in our children, as well as anxiety. Believe it or not, it's causing a lot of anxiety for young people trying to make all those decisions that they're not capable of making. And by the time they get to be adolescents, they're a bit of a mess, and I have a lot of kids coming in. Their anxiety and having anxiety and panic attacks. We don't even know why. And I think we're just wearing our kids out. So, whole chapter on that.
You also say that in your early career, your idealism exceeded your experience. What might you say if you could talk to your younger self today?
Well, and I wrote that chapter because I really believe it's something called what I call unsolicited advice, where, parenting is a very sensitive and personal issue for parents. And so you can talk, as a medical profession, you can talk about a lot of things with patients, sensitive issues, their weight and their diet and their smoking and their drinking and even their intimacy. And you can talk about a lot of things. When it gets into parenting, it becomes a whole different ballgame. And I don't know, I think it's more of a personal reflection on how they're doing. And so it's a very sensitive issue. And so if you don't go at it in the right way, you can find yourself, when I say, going down a rabbit hole that you just don't have a way out of. But as far as, so that would be the one thing I wrote the chapter for. But it really, what I see for myself that I would do different is I would really, early in the time that I have mom and dad there, which is usually right after the baby's born, in the room or in the office the first few visits. After that, I usually have one of the parents. I would really emphasize that them getting back to having a date night, to keep their marriage strong, to make it a priority. I talk about love priorities in the book, and keeping the marriage the first, the children are welcomed members, jobs are third, and activities are fourth. And I would really emphasize that, and then I would walk through at different well visits about what they're doing in their family, to really build on the positive parenting side of it, so that we're not doing so much correction and backtracking, which I spent a lot of time on the parenting stuff, but it was always when there were problems. So I would do a lot more prevention, especially about the strength of the marriage, because we got a 50% divorce rate in this country, and it's just unfortunate.
We're visiting with Dr. Stuart Eldridge. The book is entitled Passionate Parenting. And Dr. Stuart, if someone would like to learn more about you, your work, your book, is there a website that encompasses all that information at one place?
It is. I've actually, there's two ways. I have a website that I've just got created, and I'm just getting going. It's called teachpassionateparenting.com. And it talks about me and what I've done, and the book is on there as well. And then I'm doing it's really a blog site, and I'm hoping I can get active where parents can write in, and we can have more open discussions, and I can help answer questions and those kind of things. So teachpassionateparenting.com. And then I also have a Passionate Parenting Facebook page, and I've been putting stuff on there for a while, and I'm actually involved in a 10-part, I call it the American Family in Crisis, How to Build Strong Families, and I just posted part 6 of a 10-part series, and that's got a good response. I've gotten likes and stuff from pretty much all over the country, and so that's been a real neat thing, and I'm putting that on that teachpassionateparenting.com page as well. So those are the two places that are probably the best to contact me. Of course, you can get the book from tapepublishing.com as well.
Okay. Although your book is written for professionals, does it include advice for parents as well? And what's the core message that you really would like to convey at the end of the day?
Well, it absolutely is a book that parents can read and benefit from. It's not written in some medical lingo. It does have a directive towards healthcare professionals, but that's easily overlooked because the teaching is still the same, and so parents are really, I've had a lot of compliments about their liking what it says and how it's talking about different parenting issues, and it's a very positive parenting book to try to do things to prevent having to do so much correction in your parenting. And so, the real core message that I just believe really needs to get out there is that parents really want to spend time thinking about their parenting. We would never think to go get a license, a driver's license, without taking a test, without practicing and training and learning how to drive a car. We wouldn't go to a job without training, but yet we'll have these wonderful little human beings given to us by the Lord, and we think we can just kind of do this without really any training. And so what I really would try to emphasize to parents is that they would spend the time to learn the art and skill of effective parenting. It's a training process, and I think it's important that they spend time and that's why I called it passionate parenting, because you do 3 things when you're passionate about something. You spend your time, money, and energy. And we need to spend our time, money, and energy learning how to be effective parents. And so that's the core message I would give out there, is that they really want to spend time learning to be an effective parent.
To what extent do intact families, Dr. Stuart, have on the way children adjust in life?
Well, I believe it takes mom and dad to be the best for a child or the children, because we all parent differently. Men and women parent differently. Women are more nurturing. Men are a little rougher and a little more roughhousing, a little more authoritarian, which is okay, or authoritative at least. And so they need to see both of those types of parenting styles, and they need to learn the love that they get from each style. I mean, men are more securing. They feel the child feels more secure a lot of times with the male role, but they're very much more nurtured and loved and taken care of by mom. And so I think, it really is important for long-term health that the marriage is maintained in the primary relationship in the family, and I think that really benefits the children. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, and so for the single parent, it's important that they still try to maintain a very positive, passionate relationship with their children and teaching them all they can, understanding at the same time that there's going to be some degree of void unless they can develop a good relationship with their ex-spouse and help that be a nurturing thing for their children. I mean, it's absolutely true that children can do well in families where mom and dad are not in the same household, as long as they're working together to try to do the best for the child. And that's where sometimes it just doesn't happen. But certainly the intact mom and dad in the same household is the optimum. It's how the Lord designed it, and it's the way it works best.
You also bring up in the book a very troubling trend in psychopathic behavior. What is happening, and what role do parents play in all this?
Well, unfortunately, this psychopathic behavior that has been developing over the years is related to a couple of things, but it's mostly related to a feeling of entitlement that gets developed over time with children when they're not expected to do things or to earn certain privileges. So if they're given so many things that they somehow believe that just by being around and breathing, they sort of get whatever they want, and so they don't believe that rules and laws really apply to them because it's a spoiled mentality. It's a meism thinking, and if you're given too many choices, if you're given too many freedoms so early in your life that you don't have to earn anything, you don't have chores, you don't have to work hard, and you don't fail and get back up, those kind of things we see with helicopter parents where they hover too much and they want to protect them from any discomfort. All of those things create in the child a feeling that they're entitled and that laws don't pertain to them because they're spoiled in their thinking. And parents can avoid that. They can avoid that all by just, proper type of parenting training that they get, learning to give choices when the child shows the maturity to handle them, pulling them back when they start showing bad behavior, or a meism mentality, training their children to think about the preciousness of others. Jesus was other-oriented, and that's what we need to be training our children to do. And so parents can certainly help that by training children to understand the preciousness of others and keep them from getting into this idea that, laws don't pertain to me, that things don't matter to me because whatever I want, I get. And that's what we've been doing to some of our children. And that's where they start developing this psychopathic behavior.
In your book, you call marriage relationship the primary relationship in a family. Do you think that too many parents tend to put their job or their children first as opposed to their marriage?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I think that's the reason we have such a high divorce rate. Like I said earlier, I call it the love priorities, and it's a matter of learning what should be the most important. That's not necessarily what you'll spend your waking hours in, because some people work a lot of hours, but it's very clear to a spouse whether they are the priority, even if you're not always home. If you're calling regularly, if you're checking on them when you're there, you're invested in your spouse, you're invested in your children, you're paying attention to what's going on. You're not just there, reading a magazine or watching television, and you're really involved in your family, and people can tell when they're a priority. And I think that's really critical to the family. And so, but I think people get those out of line. They get so busy with work or their own activities. And sometimes it's the activities of the children. They think they're doing great by having their child involved in every activity. The problem is the parents become kind of glorified taxi drivers. And, they're just driving their kids every which direction. They're never together. They're not sitting as a family. And it pulls the parents apart as a husband and wife. It damages the marriage. And it makes the children believe that it's all about them. So parents have a tendency to become child-centered in their parenting. So they get their priorities out of line. They forget to make the marriage first. They make the children first. Their job is second. All the activities they're doing is somewhere about the same level, and then somewhere in there they're hoping the marriage stays together. And that's just a priority problem. And I think it confuses the children, and it creates a lot of problems in the family.
Mm. Do you think parents are too distracted with other obligations or activities to be effective in their primary role?
Oh yes, and that's unfortunate. But in today's environment with the economy the way it is, many parents have to work. Both parents have to work and need two incomes to survive, and that by itself keeps one from being able to be home, investing in the children, and spending more time in the family. And so it pulls them apart, and they get really we're pushed to be successful in our careers. Both mom and dad, and men and women, and so that has a tendency to get our priorities in the wrong alignment, and it hurts us. So and it hurts the children, it hurts the family. So I do believe they get too many activities, and sometimes it's just, wanting to play too much golf or sports or being out on, and all those things are fine. All those things are great release for adults, but you can't have it be a higher priority, than your family.
We are visiting with Dr. Stuart Eldridge. The book is entitled Passionate Parenting, and Dr. Stuart is someone that's just joining us in the last few minutes, and they haven't heard you pass that information along. Could you pass along the website that's best to learn more about you, the work, and other ways to get the book?
Yes, it's called teachpassionateparenting.com, and it's has an about section that talks about myself and the book and what I've been doing over the years, and then there's a blog place where you can go in and read about a 10-part series that I'm working on about how to build strong families, and so that's in there as well. And so the book is available through that. You can get it through tapepublishing.com. And there is a website that I have through Tape Publishing, but the one I'm spending most of my time where you'll see information about and things that you can blog and talk about is going to be on the teachpassionateparenting.com website.
You also talk about overprivileged and overprotected children. What happens to these overprotected children as they get older?
Well, what they really have trouble with, it's funny, there's actually an article written many years ago by, I forget the author's name at this point, he called it A Nation of Wimps, and it's an interesting article, but it basically means that children are just fragile, and he calls it the fragile child, and they really struggle with relationships because they learn, by being protected all the time, that if as long as a relationship feeds them, then it's fine. But as soon as it does not, then they're on to a next relationship, and so they struggle with marriage. They struggle at work and their jobs because it's all about me instead of others, and they're not putting others before themselves. And so that's one of the things they struggle with. The other thing is they just suffer from a lot of anxiety because they're so overprotected when they're very young. We need to let our children fail at little things and then be there to help pick them up and dust them off and move on again and to strengthen them, because life's not easy. Life is hard. And if we buffer our children from every disappointment, including school and at home, if they don't have to earn, we've got to the point now where parents are really pushing schools to soften their grades because they don't want their child to get anything else than a perfect score, but then they get to college and the professors don't care. They don't understand that. And I've got children that can't go to college and take a test without being on a medicine for anxiety because they're so anxious about it all that they can't even get through a test. And we're doing it because we're buffering them way too much with that kind of helicopter parenting. And that creates a lot of anxiety. So there's a whole host of things that can happen if you hover too much and you don't let your children fail at the little things, and then learn how to, recover and move on and get tougher. It's not an easy world. So,
Dr. Stuart, what would the final piece of advice that you would give parents who want to do a good job with their kids? What would that piece of advice be?
I guess I would say that you really just want to emphasize being an effective parent. And that may look different for everybody and what they think. And I mentioned something about the 4 C's in my book, character and commitment, confidence and consistency. And, those things have to do with being an effective parent. You want to show good character where you walk your talk and you don't say one thing and then do another. You want to be committed to your family and to your spouse. You want to show competence, which means you take the time to learn, either through a parenting course, through a book that you find to be good and consistent. And I think most of the Christian parenting courses are much better as far as getting the kind of treatment or training that you want. And then you want to be very consistent with your children. All those things are important because you want to parent the different personalities of your children. They'll be different in the way you may interact with them to some degree, but you don't change the standard. God set a standard of right, wrong, and you try to bring your children to that standard. You don't parent down to a different child, or if the more difficult child, you give in more, and the easier child that you have higher expectations for, you don't want to parent differently. So all those things are very important, I think, as a bottom line for parents to be the best they can be at raising their children.
Mm. The book is entitled Passionate Parenting. The author is Dr. Stuart Eldridge. And, Doctor, we always allow our guests at the end of the program to pray with our listeners that are maybe in that place, maybe in this case, maybe that we have some people that are listening that are really struggling with being a parent. And obviously the biggest struggle is maybe they don't have Jesus as their Lord of their life, and they need that opportunity, but they also would like the privilege to have someone pray for them that are struggling with parenting issues. And, Doctor, would you be willing to do that as we spend the last couple of minutes on this?
Oh, I'd be glad to. It'd be my honor. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this time that we had to just share and to talk, and we pray that this discussion can be helpful for those that are listening. Lord, we know that parenting is not easy in this day and age. There's lots of struggles for young parents, getting the information they need, the kind of training they need to be an effective parent. There's a lot of stress and anxiety, and society's teaching things that are not necessarily a way that you would want them done, that the biblically based training that you've laid out in the Bible is the best. And Lord, we just pray that parents can find that, and that they can seek that out and be the most effective parent they can be, and guide them through the process, that they will place you in the center of their family, and that will always strengthen the family the most. And we pray that that can happen for them, and that they can find the resources they need to be the best parent they can be for their children. In your name I pray. Amen.
Our guest today on Second Chances has been Dr. Stuart Eldridge. The book is entitled Passionate Parenting. One more time, Dr. Stuart, the website that one could visit?
TeachPassionateParenting.com. All one word, TeachPassionateParenting.com.
And we want to thank you.
And you can go on the Passionate Parenting Facebook page.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you once again for being a guest. Tune in next week for more Second Chances right here from Advantage Radio Ministries on Lift FM.